Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Congresswoman. Powerful message, clear ask. It's clear what our task is ahead of us. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about how Open RAN and what we've learned about Open RAN can actively move forward and improve US competitiveness in 5G. So we've been able to have the privilege of building over the last couple of years the world's first carrier-grade, public cloud-native, standalone 5G network, providing coverage to more than 70% of Americans. This network is intrinsically open. This network is intrinsically driven by APIs. And that gives us the possibility to live in a world driven by APIs. It makes us easier to interact with. But more so, because it's built on Open RAN, it gives us the possibility to move at the speed of the cloud. It gives us the ability to draw in vendors at a much higher speed. It allows us to be more innovative. But it also allows the network to be more secure. Our threat surfaces are a lot more visible than they were previously. And that allows us to have an ecosystem that actively fosters an environment built intrinsically to be able to have competitiveness from our partners, the ability to innovate, and the ability to integrate at much higher speeds, because it lives in the cloud and it works intrinsically with APIs. So this is a picture of our idea. This is how we've put this together. Way over 80% of everything that we've done in our network was done with US technology. AWS, Oracle, VMware, Intel, JMA, the list goes on. So we've built the first national Open RAN network in the cloud by using predominantly US technology. And this allows us the ability to also help drive the standards using perspectives from the US, which is absolutely crucial. So when we started down the journey of wanting to build a carrier-grade network in the public cloud using what was then unproven Open RAN technology to cover more than 70% of Americans in less than 3 years during COVID, people thought that wasn't possible. Now that it's done, we've put in place a network that gives our customers the ability to control what they want to be able to do. It puts flexibility at their fingertips. So Ulf already spoke about this, the programmability of the network. That lives at the heart of how this network operates. Now, Open RAN brings that, and 5G brings that. The other advantage that comes from bringing this in is the ability to introduce the radio intelligent controller. And the radio intelligent controller is this magical part of this ecosystem that allows us to take any amount of computational knowledge, the entire power of the cloud, and plug it directly into the radio network to be able to do very simple use cases using X apps and R apps, such as managing power. We could optimize the network way faster and better than what we ever could with self-optimizing networks. We can change the modulation scheme to get more out of the spectrum. We can do all kinds of things with security because we have this highly observable network to be able to see what's going on the network. Notwithstanding, it gives our customers the benefit of the programmability, and it gives us the capacity to be flexible down to maybe even milliseconds. And as we've learned these various components of how this network is able to operate, we are able to support US national interests by taking this network that is intrinsically open and multi-vendor and support those engagements globally. Yet at home, we are able to take the capabilities of a highly secure, highly redundant, scalable network and apply those in multiple spaces in the United States with the DoD and with other defense organizations. Now, with Dish and EchoStar having joined forces, that helps us to take this Open RAN capability that we have, the understanding that we've built on how to run this in the cloud, and to connect that to non-terrestrial. So we have terrestrial networks and non-terrestrial networks. Knowledge of satellites, knowledge of cloud, and knowledge of these open ecosystems, to be able to lead the way to the future of how terrestrial and non-terrestrial will combine to form new ecosystems. Underlying architecture will be sitting in the cloud, so we can innovate at the speed of APIs. Yet, we'll be able to use that predominantly using US technologies, which helps us to compete globally at a completely different level. So Open RAN does help us to see a path to the future on how we can use the cloud and Open RAN to innovate at a completely different level than what we've previously been able to do. It allows us to limit the possibility for 1 or 2 or 3 entities to dominate the technology space. It intrinsically facilitates competition and innovation. It allows easier interaction of the ability to change components in the network to be able to innovate at pace. But outside of the innovative benefits, as we've heard, there is very, very strong bipartisan support because this is also a national security issue. This is more than just a telephone call. This is more than just broadband. This is about how the US will position themselves in the future and how we will lead technology and 5G moving into 6G into the future. And to support and help us grow in that journey, our recommendation would be that the NTIA should continue to distribute the funds that they've made available through their fund. Actively put that to work. Actively put that to work. The DoD and other government agencies should encourage the use of private Open RAN networks so that these agencies both have the ability to leverage the US landscape of technology. They can see the threat surfaces in a way that they've never been able to see those threat surfaces before, and that they can use the cloud and the RIC to be able to apply innovation in a way that's not been possible before, so that they're not limited to what the technology ecosystem itself only brings. And lastly, the US government, as they've done, should continue to promote Open RAN standards. Should continue to make sure that Open RAN is promoted in its pure form and that other actors do not intervene to try to lock down parts of this ecosystem, to try to manipulate parts of these ecosystems, so that the ecosystem becomes interconnected again in a way that it used to be, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid. And promote the use of Open RAN for its allies and the partners that it has internationally. Fundamentally, our message is that Open RAN is great for broadband, it's great for 5G, but it helps us to drive the agenda that we need to drive forward in the US in a very successful, very, very real manner. Thank you very much for your time. I wish you a very pleasant evening.